And our webinar today is Digital Transformation from Good to Great by Cut the Mustard. AJ, the Managing Director, is going to be doing the presentation today, and we're delighted to have him with us. So thank you very much, AJ. For those of you that don't know, we can see and hear you today. So I would suggest that you just mute all your microphones whilst we start today, and obviously there will be a quick Q&A at the end for any questions that you have for AJ. AJ, it's over to you.
Great, thanks Laura. Morning everyone. So welcome to Digital Transformation from Good to Great. I've been, I suppose, in digital transformation really for the last 30 years or so. We, as a company, have been sort of going since about 2002. And I wanted to talk to you really about three things. So the first part will be looking at a bespoke system that we built for a client. The main reason for doing that isn't, I mean, it's obviously because we're proud of it and then we enjoyed what we did. But I think you can also learn a lot from just looking at a real life example of what someone else has done in terms of a bespoke build. We're also then looking at a specific example of choosing software as a service as a particular platform to work with a particular company. And again, I think you can learn from what we've done with that company to see how we went about choosing software as a service. But then we also added a hybrid approach to that. So there's a bespoke element there as well. And then the final part of the presentation will be really just about how you go about choosing between software as a service or a bespoke solution. Again, just from sort of personal examples, but also, I suppose, to just give you an idea of what kind of things are possible, and also what sort of considerations you should make when you're going through a digital transformation in general, and how to go about it. So those are the sort of three elements of what we're looking at today. It's going to be sort of workshop style. So I think even though I'm presenting, if you've got any questions, just stick them in the chat. I'll try and cover them as we go through, but if I don't, we'll pick them up at the end. And I know Laura's going to keep an eye on that as well. So Laura, if there's anything that's relevant, just jump in and ask. That's not a problem. So a bit about the company. So we were formed in 2002. I joined in 2010. At that stage, the company was quite small. It was only 4 developers, plus the guy that ran it. We grew to a team of around 25. We moved to Manchester from the base in Chorley. We were primarily into web development and mainly working for one client in the social housing sector. The client that we were dealing with at that time, we were doing a lot of development work for them and effectively built a team up for them. But they decided they needed that team in-house because we were handling maybe £130 million worth of transactions through the systems that we built for them. So because of that, we sort of effectively moved that team to that client, downsized to some extent, but then sort of started rebuilding on a smaller scale, but still doing fairly complex work. So it's not websites as such, it is purely digital transformation. It is looking at companies, looking at systems, and really how you can benefit from the way the digital market has changed. So what I'm going to start with is a company that we've done a fair amount of work for over the last few years called Organic North. I thought you'd like their logo. This wasn't our doing, but we were involved in the decision making at the time, which was a bit sort of out there, but I hope you like it anyway. So Organic North are, as it says, corporate wholesalers. So they supply fruit and veg to shops and box schemes up and down the country. They operate from the Smithfield Market in Manchester. And the way they were working was basically just using a spreadsheet. So if you imagine this is the spreadsheet I create the spreadsheet every single week. So they have deliveries twice a week. So goods come into them and they send them out to their customers. because it's all fresh produce, they only buy what they want to, they only buy in what they've actually sold to their customers. But before they send out the price list to the customers, they need to know from the growers what's available. So it's quite a complex situation. We did look at a software as a service solution as an option, but we soon found that actually there was nothing really out there that would handle their type of business. So the spreadsheet that they had to create was literally 1,300 rows. So 1,300 products, which I think you can see the type of products they were producing at the time. So because these are all seasonal as well, products would come into season and go out of season. So as they changed, literally every week, they would have maybe 40, 50, 60 different products that they had to add and delete from this spreadsheet. And that was literally copying and pasting or inserting rows in the right places. And then for each of the products, obviously the prices would change. So I've obviously just removed the prices for privacy. But the prices would change each week, so they'd have to check all the prices. They would also then need to know from the suppliers what the supply was like. So in this case, for example, beetroot red, that's in short supply. There was only 20 available that week. So they had to highlight that in red, and they'd have to tell customers, well, actually the red items you might not get, or they're limited supply, so don't order too many. So if you imagine they had to do this for maybe 30 or 40 suppliers, normally on a Monday, they had to go through each of the suppliers, ring around and update the spreadsheet with the items that were available that week. The reason the spreadsheet was 240 columns is that this spreadsheet then went out to their customers, obviously without the pricing information. Their customers would then order from the spreadsheet. So they would literally fill in the spreadsheet based on what they wanted. On the right-hand side, you can see the Monday and the Wednesday. So they normally have 2 delivery days, and you can see the totals for the customers, but this is where the customers would order as well. When those spreadsheets came back from the customers, they would be pasted in to the right place. So you can see here, you've got customers in all of columns. And because of the number of customers and deliveries they had, they were using 240 columns on the spreadsheet. So that goes to column IF, if you're interested. So they had to literally copy and paste all the information into this master sheet. And then they would use the master sheet to send the orders to their suppliers, again, just by extracting the information that they needed. And they would then also use this sheet as an A3 printout to decide who got what products. So for example, on the beetroot red here, we have, these are the customers. So on the particular delivery days, they'd have 2 to 1 customer, 1 to another customer. And if you imagine a pallet would come in, maybe with 50 or 60 boxes on, they would need to see quickly who has what product, and then they would move those goods to the right part of the warehouse. So they were struggling because they were printing this sheet, and because it was 240 columns, they were printing onto A3 paper, and they literally couldn't have added any more customers on because they were literally running out of space on the paper. They've reduced the font size, so it was really as small as they could read, but they just were really struggling to take on more customers. So our solution was actually to put everything online, and this is what we've done. So looking at it in a bit of detail, we obviously made it a lot cleaner in terms of what the layout looks like, but they can now switch products on and off. So you've got a little red button here, or a green button. If you press the red button, it'll switch the product on. And if you turn a green button, press a green button, it turns it off. You can obviously see what products there are. you can update prices quite easily. So all these boxes are interactive, and they use what we call Ajax. So if you update a price in this particular box, it would update directly onto the database without having to do a page refresh. So that makes it a lot easier to update prices. Based on the prices they get in, they obviously automatically calculate the delivered prices and the selling prices. When they're ringing, so they still need to obviously ring around their suppliers to see what's available. But when they do, they can actually put in the estimated quantities that are available in these boxes. And they can also decide what the availability is like. So if it's a good availability, they would just choose that as a good availability. But they've also got options for limited and very limited, and obviously okay as well, which is in between the two. They can manage stock as well online, and they can change the markups if they want. There's other aspects that we've included as well, which I won't go into too much detail on because they're quite specific to them. But basically, it just makes the whole process a lot quicker than it used to be, just ring around these suppliers. You could also have multiple people looking at different suppliers because you can tick off when a supplier has been reviewed, and then it would just grey out that supplier. So this is a long list. So it is still 1,300 product lines. Well, probably in fact more now. They're probably up to about 2,000. But because it's scrollable, they can actually update those products much more easily than they would have done in the past. And this process, it used to take probably most of Monday to get this list together. It now takes about 3 hours on a Monday. So there's a specific time saving there as well. So this is how they create the list. And then the other main change is when customers receive the list. So if you imagine they used to get a spreadsheet that they had to fill in. Now customers get this. So they can log into the site themselves. They already have their delivery day preloaded. So we know that this customer is for a Wednesday. It gives them clear instructions about how to order. They can search, so they can search for suppliers or for products. They can view by supplier or by product. So just on the views, because it's a bespoke system, Organic North wanted to be able to put certain suppliers at the top of the list. So they can do that through the back-end system. So normally Royal Oak goes at the top of the list. But if they have a new supplier, that can go at the top of the list for a week or two. And then they can decide where they should appear on the list later on. So a customer can order online. They can see what the availability is like really easily. So they know that if they order some items which are limited, they may not get them. A lot of the suppliers, because it's organic, they look at the country that they are buying from. So we've also got a filter, so they can just filter UK produce. So they're not, if they want to just buy locally, they can. They can see who the organic certifier is, and obviously they can look at comments as well. We've also recently added the ability just to add photographs in as well. So there are some items with icons with photographs that they can just click on. So if they're not sure what butter hands look like, they can just click on a photograph and they can see what they look like. So they place the orders. Because the orders are done weekly, there is a limit on timing as well. So most of the orders have to be in either on a Wednesday or a Thursday. And again, that's all managed by the system. So in the past, if you imagine, they might get a spreadsheet in at 10 o'clock on a Thursday with orders from Royal Oak, and they'd have to ring the customer and say, well, actually, you're too late ordering. We actually can't deliver these goods next week. Now it's all managed online, and we can effectively just switch off ordering so customers can't order after a certain deadline. So when the order comes in to Organic North, they get a little bell, and they can see how many orders are unopened. Again, we're using what we call Ajax here. So the screen refreshes automatically in the background. So if there's a new order that comes in, they don't have to keep refreshing the screen. It would appear automatically on the screen itself. We also use color coding, so we can see what the status of the order is. So once it's green, it means it's normally been confirmed. If it's also green, it means the customer hasn't ordered any items which are in short supply. So they can see quickly which customers they can go into information, and then they can spend a bit more time looking at the customers that have ordered limited products. So they can basically just click on these buttons and the orders open up for them. So this is just an example of an order that's come in. You can see again, you've got the I'm checking this. So if someone starts checking something and then gets distracted, someone else doesn't need to, or someone else knows that that order is being checked. So they're not going to jump in unless this box isn't ticked. Same with ready to confirm. Sometimes someone might go through an order, but then someone else would confirm it. So they can just tick on the ready to confirm. Again, with the color coding, we can see straight away what the products are that are in short supply. So the red ones are either limited or very limited. The other ones in the amber are normally limited. And if there's no color coding, it just means they're in good supply. We can see what the customer wants, and we can see what's been sold already. So what's been confirmed by Organic North for that week. The amendments, again, work using Ajax. So you just change a number in the box and that updates in the background, and you don't need to refresh the page or anything like that. If they find there are certain products that they are selling out quickly on, they can just tick on sold out, and that takes them off sale straight away, so no one else can order those customers. And if you imagine, they may get 30 or 40 orders coming in at once, so they can see what they're confirmed are sold, but they can also see what is in the pipeline that is unconfirmed, but potentially sold as well. And then they can also amend products as well. So for example, if you have a very limited product, you can click on the amend, and then that takes you to a pop-up screen where you can look at other products. So in this case, it's cauliflower. So you look at other products from different suppliers who also have cauliflower. You can see what their availability is like, and you can choose to amend the quantity. So you can reduce one to 0 and increase another one. And again, that's done automatically as you enter the numbers in the box using Ajax. So you're not having to update the screen. When you click on done, it takes you back to the previous screen, and obviously that updates automatically in the background as well. So when they've produced the or when they've checked the order, they then send an email confirmation. And this is just a nice feature that we did for Organic North. They were finding they had to type out the same message to a lot of customers. It doesn't save a lot of time, but it's actually really quick for us just to have a number of pre-chosen phrases. So this is partly for the fact that they wanted to have these phrases easily accessible, but also they wanted to personalize it as well. So they didn't want to always say, glad to say your amendments are all looking fine. They wanted to change and have almost like personal messages for each of the clients to make it look like actually it's not just a computer saying this is okay, we're actually here as well. Now that also extended to the email greeting. So some customers we would say hi, some we would say hello, otherwise we may, other ones we might just say hey up. So the greeting is linked to the customer, but it's also linked to the user. So some of the users can actually have their own greetings for specific customers, and they can it just makes it a lot more personal. I mean, you might be thinking also why we don't just have an automatic system that just allocates stock according to when customers order. That was one thing that Organic North were really clear about. They didn't want people just to be able to order bang on the time that the ordering opened and effectively just pinch all the stock. they wanted to be fair about it. They wanted to make sure the customers, maybe some of the smaller customers, got the stock that they wanted. And it wasn't just a few people that took stock, that they didn't sort of took stock week after week that really should have gone to other people when it was limited items. So that's really why we didn't go down the route of a fully automated system. So when they get the orders in, obviously they then need to place the orders with their suppliers. So again, in this case, they can see what's been sold, what stock there is, if there is any, and what order they need to place. That comes automatically from the system as well. They can obviously place the order and they can end the order as well. And we've used color coding here as well. So if you've ordered less than you should have done, you can see this is highlighted in red. So you've sold 3 for one for the Monday and 1 for the Wednesday, but you've only ordered 3 for the Monday, so you need to order some for the Wednesday. And again, if you over order, you just get a flag in green that just says, actually, you've ordered a bit more than you need. They might do that to put goods into stock or to handle walk-in requests. But again, it's just a nice, easy way to look at what's been ordered. So the most impressive part of the system, I think, is the picking. So if you remember, when Organic North get goods in, if you imagine they have a pallet of goods coming in, they need to quickly decide who gets what from that pallet. And this is the system we came up for them. So this is now run on a touchscreen tablet. They can search for suppliers really easily. And from each of the suppliers, they can see what products there are. So if a pallet has beetroot chogia at the top, they know from the details which customer, so these are customer names, has how many boxes. So in this case, the top customer has 1 box, the second one has 1 box, and the bottom one has 2 boxes. We've also included color coding here as well. So the color coding works out where this customer is in terms of where in the warehouse. And we make sure that when someone is walking to a certain area, if these 2 top ones were both sort of light blue, we'd know they could actually maybe take 2 boxes, one for one customer, one for the second one. But in this case, because it's a blue and a bit of pinky color, we know these are in slightly different places in the warehouse. So you'd only send one person to the top one and another person to the second one. So it's a quick way to see how to send the staff out in the best way possible. Again, these are all opening and closing automatic, well, sorry, not automatically, as soon as you press the button. You tick off as goods are picked. And again, that's all updated in the background using Ajax. You don't have to wait for the screen to refresh. And when you've picked all of the items, you can basically just tick off if there is stock available to say, yes, I've checked the stock and it's all fine. And then you've got summaries as well. So you can see what's been ordered by customers for that particular week and what's been sold for that particular week as well. So when you are, if you imagine it, it's quite hectic in the market first thing in the morning. I mean, they're starting at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. They need to pick for about 4 or 5 hours. So when a supplier is picked, they get hidden. And you can see a little hidden button here. So again, that can be automatic, or you can include hidden suppliers as well. So if you want to check something afterwards, you can tick on the include hidden suppliers and you can see what they've had. You can only show fruit and veg supplies, so they do some dry goods as well. They can also pick out things which are under-ordered or have a mismatch, so they can quickly pick up any queries. The reason for that is when they actually pick the goods, they also check each item as well. So when they are checking, if they find something's got lost in the warehouse, they can go back to the picking and say, well, actually, I know 1 box went to this customer. Have you tried looking near them in case it went to the wrong place? So they can tell them to look in a certain part of the warehouse to see if they can find the goods that they couldn't find in the first place. So the next stage is really the invoicing as well. So when a customer the next stage is the checking. So when they have picked all the items from a product, for a customer, you can see on the right-hand side, we see what's been picked for the customers. The one with the little exclamation mark means it's not been picked yet. But then someone else can go and check the goods. So a member of staff at Organic North would go to the pallet that the customer goods are on and literally check off to make sure those goods are available. So obviously a tick it means the goods are there. A cross means the goods aren't there, and then they need to obviously check what's happened to those goods as well. They can adjust the invoice as well. So if something goes missing in the warehouse, they can adjust the invoice quite easily, just to say and they can also add comments as well, and these get automatically updated to the invoice. And if they want to add products on, they can add them on at this stage as well. So you can see here from the picking, once the items are all picked, the checking, you can also see a little green a green button. That just means that item's been checked by a checker as well. So again, it's a quick way to say, well, actually, if I've got a number of beetroots and one's missing, which is the area of the warehouse it might be in. So again, it's really good in terms of being able to not lose stock in the warehouse. So when the goods are picked and invoiced, they get sent out on vans. So again, part of the spreadsheet was they had a list of all the totals of all the products, and they had to allocate them manually to all the vans. Now what we do is use a drag and drop. So we have all the unassigned orders at the top at the beginning of the week. We can auto assign them to their usual vans, or you can literally drag and drop orders based on the weights between the vans as well. And if I just zoom in, you also have a lot of information on here about who's been checking the order, what the weight of the order is, where they are in the warehouse. You can view and send the invoices out to the customer, and you can see from color coding whether the order's been checked or whether it's not been checked yet. So that way you can also see when the van is ready to leave. And then you can obviously just tick off when the van's left. And then again, it disappears from this screen. They've also got a similar thing with pallets. So when they're building pallets up, they can mark when they're done, and they can see when they're ready for dispatch. The next bit that we do is the supplier invoice checking. So if you imagine they get a lot of invoices from the suppliers, that's all tied into the system as well. So they can look at what's been ordered, what's been delivered, see what the actual stock is, and they can adjust the screen to make sure that they've been charged for the right amounts. One thing we've included quite recently as well is they can raise claims. So they were finding they were doing quite a lot of claims on goods where there were issues with quality, things like that. So they can raise a claim quite easily. And then once these are all checked, they are sent into QuickBooks. Again, that's an automated and they can send goods, send those invoices into QuickBooks. They can also photograph the invoices, so they have a record of the invoices in QuickBooks, and they can then follow the process through. So I hope that's been useful. I think it just hopefully gives you an idea of what's possible with the Bespoke system. Obviously, I'm assuming none of you out there are veg wholesalers, but I think it's a good way to demonstrate, using a real life example, of how you can use a bespoke system to actually tailor to your business. And the key thing here is that we can add extra features on. So for example, the email system that we had, where we're just adding simple comments on, saves a bit of time for each of their users, so each of their staff members, which adds up obviously over the weeks to quite a bit of time. You compare that with the cost of the development, and it makes sense for us to do some extra development for them to be able to improve their processes. So that basically is the system that we built. It's given Organic North the opportunity to grow, so they can now take on really unlimited customers. They're now short of space in the warehouse, so they're looking to move warehouses, but it gives them the opportunity to grow. They're not limited by an A3 spreadsheet, and the other main thing that they can do is extract data from the system as well. So when they had the spreadsheet, because they were adding and deleting items, they never had an idea of the data that they were collecting. But now with the system that they've got, we're actually capturing all the data. So all of the customer orders, all of the supplier orders is all captured. But importantly, what we also capture is if there are particular weeks when there's a big demand for a certain type of vegetable, we can capture that information. If they're not able to supply it that week, they can look around to see who else has got it maybe for the following week. Or they can also include it into cropping plans. So they know at a certain time of year, the following year, they have a big demand, say, for new potatoes or asparagus. They can speak to their growers and say, well, actually, if you can grow those goods maybe a couple of weeks earlier, we can take those goods and we can charge a premium because they're in short supply. So this will all feed into a much more sustainable business. They only obviously order what they sell from their sell to their customers as well. So because of the sustainability aspects, there's a lot more we can do with the system as well. So I hope that was interesting. Any questions at this stage?
Just have a quick look, AJ, just to see if there's anybody in the chat. Of course, if you do want to ask your question live, you're more than welcome to do so. So if you want to raise your hand or unmute yourself or take your camera off, that's absolutely fine as well.
Great. So if I jump on to the next presentation, let me just stop the share. Just jump into the next part of the presentation. So the next part is really looking at a combination, a sort of hybrid approach to an off-the-shelf system that we've done for a electrical wholesaler. So if I just start that going, just give me 1 sec. Right, I'm hoping you can see my screen.
That's brilliant. We can see AJ. AJ,
Brilliant.
Just before you get going,
Sure.
Charlie's just asked a quick question. I hope that's okay if I just interrupt you. Charlie just said, looks like a system that really fits the business. I wasn't so clear. Is there a stock control handled QuickBooks, or is this the system itself?
So the stock control is all handled within the system, and all we do in QuickBooks is export the customer invoices and the supplier invoices. But again, a lot of that is automated as well. I think QuickBooks is good, obviously, at the accounting system, but it's not that good on the stock control side. So we manage all the stock within the system, but then we have a really quick link to QuickBooks as well. So I hope that's answered the question.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. I'm sure if it hasn't, Charlie will come back.
Sure.
Just let us know. Brilliant. Continue, AJ. Thank you.
Great. Obviously conscious of time as well, so I'll try and speed up a bit on this one. So this is a hybrid system, if you like. So we were working with a company called One Way Electrical, and they wanted a system that would manage their workforce. So they originally were looking at a bespoke system, but we did some work with them and we found actually an off-the-shelf system that would do the job for them, or do a large proportion of the job for them. So the system that we actually chose, and I'll go into a bit of detail about how we chose the system a bit later on in the next part of the presentation. But this is more about how we integrated with the system. So the system we chose was Simpro, which some of you may have heard of. It's a workforce scheduling system, and that basically can manage their engineers who are going out on site. They can do quotations for jobs, they can manage their engineers, and they can invoice based on the time spent on jobs. So we chose Simpro as the main driver of the transformation, if you like. But there were certain aspects of Simpro that Simpro didn't do. And also they were using, or this company was using Dropbox as well. So what we've done is created a bespoke system for them that works with the APIs from both Simpro and from Dropbox to connect to their bespoke system. I'm hoping most of you know what, maybe not what an API is, but an API is basically just a way of communicating between one system and another system. So in this case, the Simpro API is two-way, so you've got two arrows on the lines. So we can get information from Simpro, and we can also send information back to Simpro. Dropbox is just a one-way integration. So we only get information from Dropbox, but then we use that within the system that we have. And I'll go into that in a bit of detail now. So this is the dashboard we created for One Way Electrical. Again, I won't go into too much detail. It's a standard dashboard. It shows what's possible. So we've got what we call RAMs, so risk and method statements, which I'll come back to. Checklists, which I'll come back to as well, and inspections, and also a number of other reports and templates that we have. The bit that we linked to Dropbox is the toolbox talks and also the policies and procedures, which I'll come back to in a sec. But if you just bear in mind, there's an unread policy here. And then we've also added some extra features which are really sort of more bespoke rather than actually just part of the integration. And then because I've got admin rights, we just have a couple of buttons for synchronizing data. This is just really if items within Dropbox change, we sometimes need to synchronize just to make sure everything works okay. So on the policies, these are actually all stored within Dropbox. So One Way had a system already that was set up where they had their document control procedures within Dropbox, and that was shared with the health and safety consultant. So they didn't really see a need to change that. So what we did is we effectively created a system that talks to Dropbox. So on policies and procedures, we have the list of the employees. Now the list obviously comes from Simpro because all their employees are listed on Simpro. And the bespoke element shows us how many policies are allocated for each of the users, how many are read and how many are unread, and the same with the procedures as well. We can also see who's read what. This is obviously a test area, so we don't have live data, but obviously in the live data we do see items are read. So there's a couple of ways that people can be allocated to read policies and procedures. They're normally done by an administrator, and they literally click onto the user and they choose the policies that they need to read. And when they are chosen, they send an email to the user and the user gets a notification on their dashboard. The user can then click into the policy, they can read it on the dashboard, and they can mark it as read. The main advantage of this is if any of the policies change in Dropbox with the synchronization that we're using, we automatically mark those as unread. So whoever's administrating can actually see there's been a change, and they can reallocate those policies to the the particular users that need to read them. So that's how we've integrated with Dropbox. We've also integrated a bit further with Simpro. So this is quite a simple integration. So for customer data, for example, we would create a customer within Simpro, and then we would pick up that customer on our system. So this is a list of all the customers that we have for One Way Electrical. We can see when they were created, when they were updated. And we can also just send a quick link out to that customer. So we can mail, send a form by email to a customer, sorry, a link to a customer. They can click on the link, and based on that, they can update their own site address, they can update their own contact details, and they can obviously check the details that we're holding for them. And because it's a two-way link, that automatically gets updated to Simpro as well. So this is a bit more of a complex example. So the risk and method statements are something that, again, we create on our system. Now, this is something that One Way Electrical used to do on their system, on basically using Word documents. So there was a lot of copying and pasting. They had to obviously look at that. They had to put in the customer details, the site details, the name of the job. They had to find out who was working on the job. So now what we do is we get a full list of all the jobs from Simpro, and then we create the RAMs, not quite automatically, but it's a lot easier to create the RAMs. So the RAMs are have different sections to them. So you've got the main details, key contacts, etc. A lot of this information is just picked up from Simpro. So because we know what the job number is, for example, we know who's working on the job, who the contacts are. We can put in the scope of work here as well. We can choose the particular tools that work on the, that are required for the job. And then we basically step through each of these sections. And at the end, we create a risk and method statement for the engineers. So the main beauty of this is that when we're creating a method of work, for example, we automatically can put in selected work methods. So COVID, as an example, goes on all risk assessments. What happens on arrival goes on all risk assessments. But if we choose particular types of tools, so you can see at the top here, we've got use of steps. It's an available method, but not a selected method. So if we choose ladders as the equipment that we're using, we then see that use of steps automatically gets put in to the selected methods. So that's a really good sort of interactive way to be able to choose available methods. And again, we can also just drag and drop those as well. When we highlight, we can see what the actual method is. And because they're fairly standard, these don't change very often, but if they do, we can store the changes as well. So it just makes it a lot quicker to create the RAMs. When we are looking at the method statements as well, we'll also look at the risks. So if there are particular hazards, we can again just tick off what those hazards are, and they would get included within the risk assessment as well. And then we produce the risk assessment. So this is produced again in the background. We can then attach that to Simpro. So an engineer can just log into their Simpro job, and they get a link to read the RAMs within this system, and they can actually sign the RAMs on the system as well. So they don't need to actually log in. Everything's done in the background for them. So they can sign off on the RAMs. If they have additional hazards, they can add those on as well. And once they're signed, the RAMs get attached to Simpro as well. So it's a two-way communication. One way can also find out quite quickly who hasn't actually signed the RAMs. So they can see, their full list of jobs, and they can see who still needs to sign the RAMs, so they can chase them up quite quickly. And then this shows, so within Simpro, this is just an example of a job, and a job can have attachments. You can see here that the RAMS has been attached to the job. So we can attach, obviously, the signed version as well. So we pick up the signatures automatically from the engineers. Details within the within Simpro itself. And because browsers are a lot more effective now, we can also add things like photographs to the checklists that we do. So this is a checklist that we do for vehicles. So these are regularly done. They're normally done monthly. Again, we pick up a lot of information from Simpro itself. So all the information on the servicing, the type of vehicle, who it's assigned to, that's all held within Simpro because it is a really good system. But it doesn't have an easy way to do checks on the vehicles. So what we've done is just added a list of checks that can be done on our system. They can have photographs as well. So they can take offside, near side, front and back photographs to just prove that the condition of the vehicle was in a certain state at that time. They are then produced as PDFs and they are transferred back into Simpro. So we can see here the asset itself. So the vehicle itself is within Simpro, and the checklist appears here as well. So again, we've got similar checklists for harnesses and lanyard, for steps and ladders. And again, because we are pulling out a list of jobs, we can produce accident reports, we can produce near-miss reports, or we can request site progress reports on sites as well. Or if there are any issues, an engineer can just log into the system, they can find the job that they're working on and raise an issue as well. And that's all sent automatically in the background by email. So that's basically a hybrid system for my electrical. And again, any questions?
Hi AJ, just having a look at the quick chat, just seeing if there's any questions. Yeah, just another question, just in the chat, sorry. So the back office team are using the Bespoke system and the site-based engineers are using the Simpro. Did you consider software called Magic 5?
I've not heard of that one.
Oh, something new.
Is that something that links the two?
It might be. Charlie, are you there? I'm gonna put Charlie on the spot now and just ask the question.
Yeah, no. Hi, thanks for that, guys. Yeah, so it's just in terms of the photographs, I mean, and the ability to take them and store them, really. So I mean, I have no commercial relationship with Magic 5 at all. So, but I've used it with a number of clients. That's all. It's XML based, you know, so it's quite useful. But whether it fits for a purpose for this application, I don't know. But I mean, my question was really whether or not I think the back office team were using your Bespoke system and the engineers were using Simpro. Is that the way it was split?
No, so the engineers also log into the Bespoke system as well.
Right.
And because of the way, obviously for the Bespoke system, it's a file upload. So you can either attach a file from a computer, or because of the way browsers work at the moment, if you're on a mobile device, instead of doing a file upload, you can literally just take a photograph. So you choose using the browser to take a photograph rather than do a file upload. So it just makes it a lot easier to upload photographs from a mobile device than it used to be.
Yeah, I guess probably is the system offlineable? So if there is no internet connection, is that?
At the moment, no, because that wasn't a requirement.
Okay, yeah. That's why that's possibly why you didn't look at Magic 5 then, because it is. But anyhow, it's your presentation, so thank you very much. Thank you,
Charlie. It's always useful to hear from you. Thank you very much for your input again.
Cheers.
AJ, it's over to you. I don't think there's any more questions. Over to you.
Yeah, so really the final part is just about choosing or how you go about choosing between, I suppose, software as a service and also a bespoke system, and some of the considerations that are useful just to look at for that. So again, if I share my screen, so I just come out to the right.
That's perfect, AJ.
It's going to the right one.
Sorry.
Just give me 1 sec. Okay, so I'm hoping you can see an image of an old desk.
Yes, we can.
Great. So basically, digital transformation, we obviously started with paper that just went onto computer, basically. So this was probably how I first started with digital transformation in the 90s, changing from desk-based accounting systems and stock control systems, and just basically putting those onto computer. I think what we're doing now is it's different. It's more about putting things more accessibly onto the cloud. So rather than just using computers, in a sort of disparate way, we're looking to use computers as part of a joined up approach to company processes. That would be available to the whole team, that would be easily accessible. So obviously, why transform? This talk isn't really about that. I'm hoping that you're all sort of convinced that transformation is worth doing. I think the key thing for me is it's better for employees and it's better for managers, and potentially better for customers. You've got one single source of truth. You've got, I think the process of transformation just gives you the opportunity to actually look at your processes. And I think any company that has good systems will succeed. A company that has bad systems either can't grow or can't succeed as much as it could. So what we're looking at now is really sort of how to transform, and whether it's worth looking for an off-the-shelf system or a bespoke system or a hybrid of the two. So we've obviously been into a bit of detail about how bespoke and hybrid work, but we're looking at more sort of the processes when you're considering either off-the-shelf or bespoke software. So I interchange between obviously software as a service and off-the-shelf. I think that for me, I think if you can find a good piece of software that works as software as a service, normally it's worth looking at that seriously, unless you have a lot of users or a lot of requirements that aren't covered by the system. But when you're first looking at digital transformation, I think you need to look at some sort of high-level things that are difficult to change. So things like your existing accounting package, and also what sort of integration that has. So if you're on Sage, if you're on QuickBooks, if you're on Xero, it's unlikely you want to change your accounting package just because you're going through a digital transformation. So that's probably something that's fairly high up to consider. The more modern accounting packages, so QuickBooks and Xero, both have sort of APIs, so you can talk to them quite easily. Sage is coming on board a bit more now. But as well as sort of customer invoices, also think about things like bank receipts, things like purchasing, to make sure all aspects of the accounts are covered as well. It's worth looking at your existing banking arrangements as well. With open banking, it's now a lot more accessible to get transactions online. And again, some banks will integrate more easily with some of the accounting packages, so that makes your whole transformation a lot more easy. So if you are reconciling transactions manually, you should now just be looking at whether you can get a link between your banking and accounting packages. The other main thing to look at is your existing hardware. So there was a question earlier from Charlie about whether or not things are available offline. So if you're looking at offline solutions, there's a a difference, obviously, between the Android operating system and iOS for Apple-based devices. To get good integration, it's normally best to write natively in these languages. You can get certain hybrid arrangements as well. But if you look at your existing hardware, you can see whether or not it's worth using that, or whether it's worth looking at other parts of software, other operating systems that you need. The other sort of high-level thing is actually what do you want to do? So as an example, I was working with a fairly small company that was doing kitchen fit-outs, and we could have got a system that would have done their full fit-out. It would have scheduled their workers, it would have ordered all the parts, it would have managed their workload. But they didn't want to do that. All they wanted was to do quotations. So I think you just need to be clear about what you want to do as a first step. And then you can always add further things onto that, but look at what's going to be the best sort of time saving for you. And also what your priority items are. So if you want to do quotations as the priority, then that's the right piece of software for you. You can always add other items later. So with One Way Electrical, the key features we were looking at was obviously something that would manage their field engineers. We looked at the type of work they were doing. So because they were doing planned maintenance, one of the things that attracted us to Simpro, as an example, was the fact that we could hold all of the customer assets within Simpro. And that was quite a big deal for One Way Electrical, because what they were doing up to that date was just literally keeping spreadsheets of assets with customers and then updating those as they were doing inspections. But Simpro have that sort of out of the box. So that was one of the reasons for looking at Simpro. I think also just look at the type of jobs that you're doing and the features that are available from the system that you're looking at. So these are some of the items that we were looking at for One Way Electrical. The key ones obviously was the link to Xero for invoicing. We couldn't get a link to Sage for the payroll, but that was sort of lower priority because they were fairly happy with the way that was working as long as they were doing the timesheets correctly. So it's really prioritizing what you need to do. Once you've got your list of features, I'd suggest you doing a sort of long list approach to what software is available. So there's a few places to look. You've obviously got platforms like Capterra. Just be aware that that's a paid networking platform, a paid platform. So you need to, or the software that goes on there needs to pay for it. Similarly with Google, the people at the top will be advertising, but it's sometimes worth looking further down. And ask your social media groups, ask your networking groups what kind of thing they're using, because that will give you a good idea of what's available in the market. I wouldn't limit yourself either. I'd go for a really long list of the software that's available. But obviously just make sure that they do work in the country that you want to work in. And they understand what you're looking to do as well. So some of the American software, they may use terminology like state rather than county. Postcode lookups might not work. So just be aware that that is something that needs to be considered before you make your short list. The other main thing is obviously where the data is stored. So you need to look at obviously at GDPR and data processing. Who can access the data and whether they've got case studies and are there sort of uptime guarantees. So these are the sort of things to consider when you're making your short list of companies to work with. I won't go through these in too much detail, but a lot of it is fairly obvious. The one thing that I always do is actually talk to the companies. You get a good feel for whether there's a roadmap, whether they want to develop the product, or whether they've created a product and they're now happy to sit back and just sort of take the money from monthly subscriptions. In technical terms, again, just consider things like security and backups, but not just whether they have backups, actually test them as well. Make sure the technologies they're using are up to date, and also whether or not you can access your data if you need to change in the future. And also how sort of control processes work and how they test changes to make sure they all come through okay. One thing to consider, obviously, is things like deployment. So whether it's a big bang deployment or a gradual deployment. And then when you're looking at the final choice, I put be aware of demonstrations. I think it's always easy to be sort of blown away by demonstrations, and the sales guys always say, yes, we can do that. Yes, we can do that. But actually run through the process yourself. So go through the system in detail. You can use dummy data, but just make sure the processes are all included. And also think about what's not standard. So for Organic North, for example, we had a situation where sometimes the products would change very slightly from week to week. So sometimes an item would be 6.2 kilos, sometimes it would be 6.4 kilos. We picked that up as something that was not standard, but actually happened quite a lot. So just think about those as well. And also be prepared to change your processes. The systems that you're looking at probably have better processes than you would. So take advantage of that as well. And the final thing, obviously, is look at the budget, but be aware of premium features as well, because sometimes when you're doing trials, the features can be included as premium, but you might not realize that when you're doing a trial. The other things to consider are obviously whether or not the staff can access your data, things like minimum terms and migration of data into the system as well. And obviously whether or not they've got API access for potential future development. So that's really sort of what we look at in terms of an off-the-shelf system. For Bespoke, it's a bit more, I suppose it's an easier in some ways, because you can, if you have a software as a service system available, it will probably jump out at you and it will do a lot of what you want it to do. But a couple of things to consider here. So if you are looking at budget, if you have a lot of users, even if you're paying a small amount, that can still add up quite quickly. So you just need to consider the development cost of a bespoke system against software as a system. The key benefit of a bespoke system is the intellectual property. Now that can actually increase the value of your company quite substantially if you come across a piece of software or write a piece of software that is really beneficial, not just for your company, but potentially for your industry as well. You need to consider timescales. Obviously, Bespoke does take a lot of time to develop, and you really need to have someone that will manage that process for you. I've put on here Agile versus Waterfall. I won't get into too much detail on that, but just to say, if you are considering bespoke software, always look at a sort of an Agile approach rather than a Waterfall approach where you are specifying everything up front. It's a lot better to be Agile, and you can change your requirements. And the main reason for doing that is if you change your scope, obviously the time will increase that the delivery will take, but also the cost will increase. Quality has to be taken as a standard, so you can't reduce quality, but be aware that if the scope changes, the time and the cost will change. So anyone that comes to you and says, yes, we'll deliver a bespoke system and you can have what you like, be very wary, because they just can't do that without going into a lot of detail. I'll just skim through this quickly. So when you're building, just be aware of a roadmap. So have in mind what you want to do, but don't be afraid for that to change. Technologies, obviously, the main technologies, sort of Microsoft versus open source technologies. We tend to use open source just for historical reasons. Look at the kind of frameworks you can use. So the frameworks are almost like a series of rules that go around development. But again, we can go into a lot more detail with that as well. You'll obviously need to consider things like hosting and the environment and development and testing. But again, with a bespoke system, just be aware that that's something really you should have control over as a company, even if you outsource it to someone. Make sure you're almost like the gatekeeper of the hosting. And then if you need to change providers, you have the keys. And the final thing is obviously testing. So if you're doing a big system, you need to do some load testing as well as functional testing. So just bear that in mind as well. Think about the type of software that you're using to manage the process. So Trello and Jira, both really good pieces of software that we use both of those, but for different purposes. Again, I won't go into too much detail on the actual build itself, but just be really close to the development team so that they know what you want and you know that they're building what you're expecting as well. Mock-ups are always good. I'd go for sort of functionality in preference to user interface earlier on as well. So make sure you've got the functionality, because user interface can be changed quite easily, whereas functionality may be difficult to change later on. And then obviously just consider your security as well and whether you need to encrypt items in a database. And again, when you're doing the build, you need to look at timescales. You need to look at whether or not you want to potentially resell the software. There's quite a bit of extra work involved if you want to resell software as opposed to just building it for yourself. And it's something that can be retrofitted, but it can add quite a lot to the original cost of the project as well. So that's basically just a summary of the sort of advantages and disadvantages of software as a service and bespoke. And that is it. Apologies, we've gone slightly over on time, but hopefully that should be fairly interesting. And again, any questions?
Fantastic, AJ. Thank you very much. Anybody got any questions for AJ? I know a couple of people have jumped off because I know that they said that they were just a bit short on time, AJ. Sure. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. AJ, are you okay to just stop sharing your screen just so I can share the QR code? Sure. Oh, it's disappeared from my screen. Bear with me 1 second. So just as AJ just said, there will be a QR code appearing on your screen any second. And this is just for any feedback from today's event. That would be fantastic. Brilliant. Sharing my screen now. Please don't forget, obviously, we do have a range of webinars already taken place this week. And we do have some live webinars at the end of today as well. And we also have some webinars tomorrow morning as well. So thank you all so much for coming. I can just see something in the chat. Brilliant, Charlie. Thank you for the thank you for the presentation. And obviously, he's just mentioning the digital forum that we've got going on the 8th of October at 9 o'clock. So if you are interested in this kind of webinar, that's probably the perfect place to go. Brilliant. Thank you everyone really very much. And AJ, thank you so much. Great presentation. Absolutely fantastic. And we look forward to seeing you all at some of our other webinars. But for now, it's bye-bye from me and bye-bye from AJ. Thank you very much, everyone.
Laura. Bye.
Bye.